The last time things got this tense between Canada and America in trade, it was back in 1971. And you know what? America backed down first. Let that sink in before we get into the wild stuff that just went down. Because what really happened is not what the news channels are screaming about. If you have been keeping up with this whole trade fight, stay with me, because the power just shifted in a big way that is hard to ignore. And if you have not hit subscribe yet, go do it, because this channel goes deeper than the headlines. So here is what actually went down. Trump quietly reached out to Mark Carney, not through a big press conference, not through a tweet or a Truth Social post, but through those behind-the-scenes diplomatic whispers, the kind that only happen when someone in Washington has looked at the real numbers and realized that what they are saying in public and what is actually happening in private are two very different things. And that gap between the loud talk and the quiet actions, that is the real story here. And it just cracked wide open in a way that every country watching this trade fight is going to be studying for a long, long time. Let us start with what Trump actually asked for, because it is not just about what he asked, it is about how he asked it. He did not ask Canada to just give up. He asked Canada to meet him in the middle. Basically, he offered to roll back some of the tariff moves that Canada has been calling illegal since this whole mess started. Not all of them, just some. Enough for Trump to wave a paper and say his pressure did something. He also asked Canada to hit pause on its own counter tariffs while they talked things out. Just pause, not stop forever. And he wanted both sides to put out a joint statement that made it look like everybody was stepping back together. The kind of diplomatic talk where both leaders can go home saying they got a win. Now here is what that whole package of requests is really telling you. And I want you to actually think about this, because this is where all the regular news analysis gets it completely wrong. When a negotiator asks the other side to help him look good in a statement, that negotiator is not winning. You do not ask your opponent to help you save face when you are on top. You only do that when you have run the numbers inside and realized that without a way out that does not look embarrassing, things are going to get ugly fast. Trump basically asked Canada to help him look like he won something. That is not the move of someone who thinks the next few months are going to go his way. Carney said no. But here is where everything flips, because the way Carney said no is on a completely different level than anything Washington expected from a guy who used to run a central bank. Carney did not do a victory dance. He did not rush to cameras to announce that Canada just turned down an American president. He did not use the word victory even once. What he did instead was something way more dangerous for Washington and way more lasting for Canada. He talked like a lawyer. He said the conditions for coming back to the table are the same ones Canada has had from day one. Take away the illegal tariffs, drop the legally shaky trade investigations, bring back the trade deal framework both countries signed and agreed to follow. Then we talk, in that order. Not all at the same time, in that exact order. That framing is basically a trap for Trump, and it was totally on purpose. Because the second you turn a political fight into a legal one, you change the whole game. Trump can slap on more tariffs. He cannot make legal obligations disappear. He can push harder economically. He cannot make Canada's legal argument weaker just by pushing harder. If anything, pushing harder makes Washington look worse, like a country that responds to being asked to follow its own trade promises by punishing the country doing the asking. That does not look good in front of the WTO, in front of European allies, or in front of American businesses that have been quietly begging for this to be resolved ever since the first round of counter tariffs landed. Now let us talk about the markets, because this is the number Washington cannot spin and cannot pretend away. When the news broke that Trump had reached out to Carney, markets went up, not because investors love trade wars, but because they read the outreach as a sign the war was wrapping up. When it became clear Carney had said no, markets dropped back down. Those two moves together tell you something really clean about who people think is hurting more in this standoff. Markets do not go up because Canada looks weak and then fall when Canada refuses a deal. They went up hoping America was about to get relief, and they fell when that relief did not come. The money world just told you in its most honest language that the one who needed this deal more was the one who went asking for it. And nobody is talking about what was happening inside the Republican Party in the 2 days before Trump made that call to Carney. 3 Republican senators from farming and factory states that are getting hit hard by Canada's counter tariffs quietly put out statements asking for a negotiated fix. Not calling out Trump directly, not cheering for Canada, but putting words on record that make it pretty clear that the political math has changed in their home states. Republican senators do not go on record about trade wars unless the calls flooding into their offices have crossed a line that their staff thinks is worth flagging. That line has apparently been crossed in at least 3 states. That is the real political pressure behind that diplomatic phone call. Trump did not reach out to Carney because he wanted to. He did it because enough pressure had built up in enough places that making the call became the cheaper option, and Carney still said no. Here is why that no is not stubbornness. Here is why it is actually the smartest move Canada can make right now, and why the people calling it a missed chance are reading the whole situation wrong at a basic level. A partial fix of trade violations that still leaves the legal door open for future escalation is not a real solution. It is a template, and that template would basically say to every future American administration that wants to squeeze Canada, just put on tariffs, cause some pain, offer a partial fix, and Canada will take the partial fix and pretend it was a problem both sides created together. Carney refuses to write that template. Not because he is being stubborn or ideological, but because he is thinking further ahead than the current news cycle. He understands that whatever precedent gets set in this trade fight will shape the rules of every trade dispute Canada has for the next generation. The partial deal was not a win. It was a trap dressed up to look like a compromise. If this breakdown is clicking for you, hit like right now. It is the quickest way to let me know this kind of deep analysis is worth more of my time, and it helps it reach the people who actually want to understand what is going on, instead of just absorbing whatever the headline says. Now let us talk about what Carney has quietly been building since this trade war kicked off, because this is the part that the American press has almost completely ignored. While the tariff war was getting louder and louder in public, Canada was doing something quietly in the background that completely changed its position at the negotiating table. It was building new trade relationships, and not just in a vague, we should talk to other countries kind of way. Actual concrete moves, trade missions to Nordic countries, deeper energy deals with European partners, bigger commodity contracts with Asian buyers who are themselves looking for supply chains that do not run through an unpredictable American trade relationship. Every single one of those moves was a deliberate reduction in the leverage that Washington assumed it had over Ottawa when this fight started. The original American calculation seems to have been that Canada is so dependent on the American market that there is a hard ceiling on how long Canada can hold out. Carney has been quietly proving that calculation wrong, not with press releases, but by building exit ramps that simply did not exist when the tariffs first dropped. That is the real background behind Canada's refusal today. It is not a bluff. It is a country that has spent months making itself harder to bully and is now testing whether all that work was enough to hold the line when it actually counts. So far, it looks like the answer is yes. Here is the honest part where I am not going to oversimplify things for you, because I think the takes going in both directions are missing something real. Trump's next move is genuinely hard to predict. There are 2 roads in front of him, and they lead to very different places. Road 1, he escalates. New tariffs, new trade investigations, more economic pressure to show that Canada's refusal had consequences and that Washington is still calling the shots. If he goes this route, Canada hits back hard. The economic damage gets worse on both sides, and we drift toward the July 2026 trade agreement review deadline without any plan for resolution. That deadline is not just a date on a calendar, it is the legal moment when both countries are officially required to revisit the trade agreement. Getting to that deadline in the middle of an active fight, without a restored legal framework, without a plan, creates real long-term uncertainty for the entire trading relationship, not just for this administration, but for whoever comes next, too. Road 2, Trump comes back with a better offer, one that is actually closer to what Carney needs to agree to come back to the table. Less spin, more actual substance. This road does not really match Trump's pattern of behavior or the way he has handled this whole conflict so far, but it is not impossible either. Economic pressure from the business community and political heat from within his own party have pushed this administration to quietly reverse course before, usually dressed up as strategic repositioning rather than backing down. It could happen again. What Canada is betting on, and what every decision Carney has made since the first tariff dropped has been built around, is that Road 2 becomes more and more likely the longer Road 1 fails to break Canada's will. The bet is that the economic and political cost of this trade war adds up faster on the American side than on the Canadian side, that the diversification work makes Canadian pain more manageable than Washington thought, and that eventually the numbers force a better offer to the table. That bet is not a sure thing, but it is a logical one, and nothing that has happened in the last day has made it look less likely to work out. Let me leave you with the question that actually matters right now, and I want you to drop your answer in the comments because this is genuinely worth a real conversation. Is Trump reaching out to Carney the start of a real de-escalation? Or is it a tactical pause before a bigger escalation, one designed to make Canada's stubbornness look like the reason for whatever economic pain comes next? There is no clean answer to that yet, but the way it plays out in the next 2 to 3 weeks will tell us whether this trade war has a negotiated way out or whether it just grinds all the way to the July 2026 deadline on pure stubbornness from both sides. If you want to follow how it unfolds in real time, subscribe now, because the next move happens fast, and the analysis that actually matters will not be sitting on the front page when it breaks. Every government watching this right now, in Brussels, in Tokyo, in Beijing, in every capital where American trade reliability is being quietly questioned, just watched a medium-sized country tell the most powerful economy on earth that sovereignty is not something you sell for half a deal. That moment is now part of the record, and the whole world just took notes.